Whenever there's an incident in motorsport, the work of rescue crews becomes vital. This video looks at both the mechanical side of rescue and at how crews should work with any medical personnel on the scene. It's recommended that you also watch 3 other MSF videos: First Aid in Motorsport, Motorsport Marshalling, and Motorsport Firefighting. Personal equipment for officials is covered in detail in the Motorsport Marshalling video. But as a reminder, overalls should be made of Proban as a minimum, which is flame retardant. It will help foster a team spirit if rescue crews have a specific livery. Dress in layers so that you can cope with all weather conditions. You may get very hot when working with equipment. You should have strong footwear, preferably boots that support the ankles and ideally with steel toe caps as protection. Keep in mind you may be dealing with things that are hot, heavy or jagged, so you'll need gloves. These should be sturdy but light enough for you to manipulate things. You'll need a sense of touch when doing rescue work. And ideally surgical gloves should be worn under your main gloves. Other items of equipment to consider include a belt as a place to hold things, scissors and a torch for instance. Regard eye protection as a must and protect yourself from the dangers of loud noise too. It's worth having a checklist for your personal equipment so that you don't forget anything. And it should include food and drink, although not alcohol, of course. Remember, if you're cold, starved or dehydrated, you won't be at your most efficient. Read any final instructions carefully so that you have an idea of what will be going on. And finally, on paperwork, consider having a copy of a pocket guide to rescue and resuscitation with you. There's also a more detailed A4 rescue manual available from the MSF for home browsing. So that's personal equipment. Now let's take a look at more general items. Some ASNs, like the MSA in the UK, will have approved lists of equipment, which may be mandatory. And among the items you'll need will be everyday unpowered ones, such as a crowbar, a hacksaw, screwdrivers, a spring-loaded centre punch for breaking glass, a Stanley knife, metal cutters, an axe and a hammer. Also include a general toolkit with spanners, Allen keys, a socket set and so on. A ground sheet will be useful for laying equipment out on to stop it getting lost and, more importantly, keep it clean, while a rope will often come in handy. And you may consider carrying a broom so that you can clean up after an incident. Turning now to more specialised equipment. The hydraulic combi tool that can be used to spread open a door or cut or crush metal. Hydraulic shear or powered scissors. Reciprocating powered saw. The hydraulic ram. An oscillating helmet saw. And finally, the pedal cutter. These may be powered from a hand pump or a petrol-engined pump. Having assembled the proper equipment, it makes sense to keep it in good order. Check equipment every time the rescue unit's used, but don't get into the habit of checking the same piece of kit each time. Swap the jobs around the crew so that familiarity doesn't breed carelessness. Always make sure you clean your equipment properly when you've used it. While doing this, check that nothing has been damaged. And if equipment has got wet, dry it thoroughly and make sure it's well lubricated. And importantly, watch time-expired items. All fluids and some medical equipment on a rescue unit will have expiry dates. Understand and train on all the equipment. You may be considered an ace at one particular job, but for a rescue unit to be flexible, you should be competent at all tasks. Remember, you may not always be working with the same crew members every time. Know what you are and aren't capable of. Some jobs obviously need more strength than others. And know the pecking order in your team. Who's the crew chief and so on. In fact, you should be aware of who the crew chief is before going near the unit.
I want the protective screen in with Nicky, please. The hard one and the soft one.
Clear communications are essential when in action, not least with any medical personnel on the scene. The doctor or paramedic, of course, is the one to deal with any casualties and set priorities. while the crew chief is the one to decide the strategy for extrication in line with the doctor's assessment.
2 cuts as low as possible, nearer the dash. I think you might have to do it from this side.
It's the crew chief's job to lead the extrication. He will stand back and get a full view of the incident. From this, he will formulate a plan for the extrication, including access to and from the incident. He will also have a backup plan in case of problems and a rapid extrication plan in case of something like a fire or deterioration of the casualty.
Excuse me, mate. You were up at Druids. What happened up there?
Know who, if anyone, should talk to the media if there's an accident. This could be an area for caution.
Now all the information comes from the clerk of the course up race control.
Ideally, you should not give out any information and don't discuss incidents with spectators. So, you've got the right equipment and trained on it. But obviously you need a vehicle to carry it. The type may depend on a country's national association and its requirements. It must be appropriate to the conditions it will operate in and be capable of covering the type of terrain the event is being run on. Not too tall or too wide, for instance, and with adequate ground clearance. Circuit-based vehicles favour 2-wheel drive and speed capability. For forest stages, 4-wheel drive may be more appropriate. Whatever the vehicle, stow the equipment carefully. Loose items flying about can be very dangerous. And try to store heavy items at floor level. Load the vehicle in the same way each time so the equipment falls instantly to hand. And make sure all the crew members are familiar with where the equipment is stored. Keep medical items away from mechanical ones. Bandages soaked in hydraulic fluid are not recommended. A rescue vehicle should be properly maintained and well presented. Its reliability is essential, and you should watch any legal weight limits. You may go over the limit if you keep piling in equipment just to be on the safe side. Occasionally, it's worth asking the question, do we really need to carry that? And it's certainly worth keeping proper financial records for a unit to help you when budgeting for future years. Remember that the minimum equipment list has been compiled to give adaptability. Hydraulic shears may be first choice, but if cost is an issue, other equipment such as an electric saw or even a modest hacksaw can be just as effective. When, with your vehicle properly loaded, you arrive at an event, sign on and then update yourself in case there have been changes, to the time schedule, for instance. If you've got spare time, look at the cars entered and consider what problems they might present in an accident. Touch base with the doctor or paramedic in charge and be sure to know where all the safety equipment and personnel are located. Show medical personnel what equipment you're carrying, and in turn see what they have available. And be clear on event communication, upstream and down. Know the key hand signals, for instance. They're covered in detail in the Motorsport marshalling video. On rallies, make sure you know where the rendezvous points are, as well as landline telephones. Cell phones may not always work in the wilds. Calls for ambulances should be made through the radio control. And remember, no smoking on the rescue unit. On the majority of events, you'll probably just have a pleasant time watching the action take place. But what if an accident happens? Well, first a few general points.
Standby, Rescue 1 and doctors.
Just on his way with that one on tow now.
Don't move to an incident until you are authorised to move by race or rally control.
Yeah, okay.
Scramble, Rescue 1 and doctors.
Don't just pile in. First, protect the scene. Use your own vehicle to do this. On a rally, post a triangle. While at a circuit, keep in mind that you may have to cross the track. Make sure it's safe for your vehicle to enter the track. If you know which side the incident is on, then try to keep to that side. And remember, you're not trying to break the lap record. If you crash, you can't do your job. Drive so that you are a known quantity to the competitors. At the accident, don't panic, but assess things and carry out the instructions given by your crew chief. The crew chief should take control because someone must be the leader, allocating jobs and keeping up a commentary on what needs doing. The crew will carry out some or all of the following. They will survey the vehicle and its surroundings. Ensure that access to and from the scene is kept clear. Establish control of the situation. And clear access to the patient or patients. Establish a working area. Stabilize the vehicle so no one is put at risk. And maybe remove the glass. Open or force a door. Remove the roof. Or cut away the steering wheel. The first 5 of those will be going on at the same time. Obviously, if there's a fire, this has to take priority. Firefighting is covered in detail in the MSF's Motorsport firefighting video. There will usually be incident marshals around to handle fire, but rescue crews should keep extinguishers to hand even if there isn't one. The next concern may be controlling spectators who may be fascinated by a dramatic incident. Keep in mind that a courteous approach is likely to gain more cooperation than a belligerent one. You may need to ask responsible-looking spectators to help self-police a situation. Make sure there's no smoking and disconnect the car's battery. Check that the electrics are isolated, although power may be needed for central locking or electric windows. Above all, when dealing with an incident, protect yourself, for example, by using gloves if you have to cut pillars, and cover sharp cut ends. It can't be stressed too often that you won't be able to help anyone if you yourself get injured. In some incidents, of course, there may be a casualty to consider, and they must take priority. If there is a casualty, talk to them. From the front, not the side, so they don't have to turn their head. And do what you can to reassure them. Maintain a conversation with them and let them know what's going on so they're not startled if, for instance, you have to make a bang or a cut. Note, gloves should be worn even by those not directly involved with the casualty, in case they are asked to assist unexpectedly. And shield drivers from broken glass and other debris that could be released when cutting pillars and so on. A doctor arriving at a serious incident will need equipment for him to carry out the ABC and cervical spine protocols. Therefore, he'll expect equipment to assist with the airway, breathing, circulation, cervical spine immobilization, and extrication. Let's look at these in more detail. First, the airway. The doctor will want assistance so that the head is supported while the helmet is removed in the approved manner. He'll need oxygen immediately, together with suction apparatus in case the patient is unconscious and vomiting. This equipment could be hand-operated or power-driven. Then a correctly sized hard cervical collar can be fitted. Next, breathing. The doctor may ask for a self-inflating bag with an oxygen supply to breathe for the patient. Other airway tools, such as Goodell airways, laryngoscopes, and endotracheal tubes, may be asked for quickly. In a serious airway obstruction, he or she, of course, may also ask for a cricothyroidotomy set, although not all doctors carry one. It may be necessary for him to require drugs to paralyze the patient to enable him to intubate the airway. A for airway, B for breathing, now C for circulation. An intravenous infusion may need to be established. Therefore, large 14-gauge cannulae will be asked for, together with giving sets and either a crystalloid solution such as Hartmann's or a colloid such as Hemocell. In an emergency when the helmet cannot be removed, he may even ask for a helmet cutter to remove the chin bar to access the driver's airway. Ideally, the driver should be wearing glasses during this operation. If you have difficulty removing a helmet strap cutter may be required. Last but not least on the list, of course, is getting the driver out of the vehicle. When doing this, the most important thing to consider is the spine. In the event of spinal injuries, a spinal immobilization device such as a KED, RED or TED splint and longboard may also be requested. Incidentally, the doctor may ask for assistance with radio communication to the Chief Medical Officer or Event Controller to organise further medical assistance or evacuation by ambulance or helicopter.
If you could dispatch an ambulance to this location, we'll send him off to the med centre.
So that's the medical side. Now, let's look at how to handle the mechanical side of rescue. Ensure the car is stabilized and won't roll or slide during the rescue. That way, it doesn't put you or anyone else at risk. Laminated glass cannot be broken cleanly, so it's better to consider removing the windscreen as a whole. This will require cutting through the rubber strip, enabling it to be peeled away all around the screen. Then a screwdriver can be used to lever the screen away from the frame without breaking it. Some cars are fitted with bonded windscreens. In these cases, the best method is to cut out a small section of the A-pillar on both sides and then lever the upper section away using a combi tool. Remember to make the first cut on the A-pillar as low as possible and the second one a couple of inches above that, close enough just to fit in the jaws of the combi tool. If possible, two combi tools can be used at the same time. Either way, the screen bonding will be broken and the roof can be removed. Side windows will shatter when a spring-loaded centre punch is held tightly against the glass. If the competitor is in danger of being showered with the broken glass, cover the window with gaffer tape before using the centre punch. Then the shattered glass can be removed more or less in one piece. There are three methods of cutting pillars: the hydraulic combi tool, the powered reciprocating hacksaw, and the hydraulic shear. When in use, hydraulic equipment will often move around. Do not try to resist this movement during cutting. Allow it to move or stop cutting and reposition. The powered hacksaw may prove as effective as the more powerful hydraulic machines and will probably be quicker to deploy. Even a conventional muscle-powered one can be the best option if other devices are not available or if speed is vital. Bear in mind that after a major accident, the car body may be deformed, storing strain energy. This may be released violently when the pillar is severed during removal of the roof. Be aware of the direction in which it will spring and be ready to keep clear. When cutting the B pillar, be sure to line up above or below the seatbelt anchorage that will prove difficult to handle. The B pillar should always be the last one to cut before removing the roof, as this is the one that the driver is likely to be leaning against, and by the time you cut it, they will have got used to the noise and vibration. Where a door is frozen shut after an accident, it may be necessary to remove it by bursting open the hinges. Access is gained by first squeezing the wing over the front wheel with a combi tool. As the wing compresses, the trailing edge in front of the door is pulled forward, exposing the hinges. This enables the combi tool to be inserted and then force the door away from the chassis, breaking the hinges. Note that if anything breaks or jams, put it down. Don't try to fix it. Use another tool, as there are often tools that can do more than one job. The door can then be lifted clear, giving access to the casualty. Remember that not all racing cars have removable steering wheels. Where it is bolted to the column, it's best removed by using a pedal cutter that shears through the column, enabling the wheel to be removed rapidly. If the driver's feet are crushed against the pedals, a pedal cutter is best used to free them, rather than manoeuvring the legs out of the way. With a single-seater, there will be less space to work in. In most cases, it will be possible to remove bodywork to gain access to the casualty. This can also give better sight of the legs and feet to see if they are trapped or damaged by chassis or suspension intrusion. Be careful to protect the casualty when cutting the chassis. Incidentally, if you anticipate meeting significant problems with any competition car, bear in mind that a mechanic or engineer from the team may be able to advise on the best way of freeing a driver. When dealing with the roll cage, beware that if the cage has been deformed in the accident, there may be strain energy stored in the tubes that will cause them to spring apart during cutting. This will normally be true after a severe frontal impact, and it could present a significant risk to the rescue marshal. Remember also that all cutters will tend to move during operation. Whatever the direction, let them move. Don't try to stop them. If airbags are fitted, take great care not to trigger their deployment, as this will present a risk to both driver and rescue marshal. And finally, if there's any risk of fire through fuel or oil spillage, take great care to minimize the risk of sparks during metal cutting. We've seen how to handle the mechanical side. If you've just dealt with an incident, there's no law that says there won't be another. So get your equipment sorted out and properly stowed as soon as possible. On a rally, sprint or hill climb, you may need to do a casualty transfer to a county ambulance, so you may lose some of your kit. If you're at a circuit, there may be an opportunity to replenish your kit, but race control must always be told if an incident has left you short of mandatory equipment.
We do have a problem with the hydraulic, so I need to...
Confirm to the clerk of the course that you are restored and ready for action again. On any event, keep a record of what happened. In the UK, there is a medical form that goes back to the MSA, as does a scrutineer's form on the car. Whatever the documentation, concentrate on facts, not opinions. The crew chief should do this while the crew are sorting things out and clearing up. Lastly, have a debrief to see what you can learn for next time.
See how it goes. Not bad overall, but I think we need to look at one or two things.
After an incident, there may be a vehicle to be recovered, and on many events, there will be a dedicated recovery unit to handle this. Whoever's involved, certain basic principles apply. First, appreciate there are risks involved, so do take care. Ensure, for instance, that the vehicle is stabilized. Use a rope or suitable strop to secure it and stop it rolling on you. Be cautious of burnt rubber or plastic because they can be harmful. Switch off the electrics, knock the car out of gear, and release the handbrake. And check for obstructions like trees, roots, or loose bodywork that could make things more difficult. Next, look for suitable attachment points.
wrap a single chain around the axle, which is a good strong anchor point, without causing damage to that brake pipe.
On production cars, the standard brackets may be fine for towing, but not for recovery, where on a slope greater than 45 degrees, the force required is equivalent to actually lifting the vehicle. Ideally, find a suitably strong point on the suspension or axle which can be used.
We'll attach it to that strong axle point there.
Preferably one each side to spread the load. Then attach strops or chains and the winch cable. And watch there are no sharp edges that could cut them. Ready? Not quite. Double check everything. A small tip. If you're using shackles, don't fully tighten them, but slacken them off a quarter turn. Otherwise they'll tighten during the recovery operation and you won't get them undone. And before winching, place a blanket or rope over the cable halfway along.
Right, we've got a hole there. Now we need to dampen the cable. Can we put a...
This will dampen the cable if it breaks and prevent dangerous backlash.
Right, if you can move back again to a safe position, folks, please.
Check there's no one in a dangerous place. Take up the tension on the cable and then winch away, with the winch master controlling things by hand signals to the winch operator. It's important that one person is in charge. Finally, after recovering it, take the vehicle to the agreed rendezvous point. Simple? Well, it's certainly straightforward. But to repeat, there are risks, so do take care. Obviously, no video can replace on-the-job experience and training in rescue techniques, but it is hoped that this video has at least highlighted the essentials. To sum up, watch the videos First Aid in Motorsport, Motorsport Marshalling and Motorsport Firefighting. Ensure you have the right clothing and equipment. Know how the equipment works, maintain it and train on it. Swap jobs frequently. Stow all the equipment carefully. Maintain the rescue vehicle. Always work as a team, taking orders from the crew chief. Protect the scene. Keep access and egress clear at all times. And remember to assess the situation first. Cut pillars as low as possible. And always protect the driver from broken glass or jagged edges. Talk to and reassure casualties. Understand what support a doctor will need. Appreciate the risks involved in vehicle recovery. And finally, debrief so that you learn for next time. Rescue marshals perform a vital job, and all competition drivers at whatever level owe them a great debt of gratitude. Thank you for your attention. The MSF wishes you many days of safe and enjoyable motorsport.